My own daughter stole my villa and gave it to her husband's family. She stood in front of me and said the words that cut deeper than a knife. It belongs to them now. I worked my whole life for that villa. Every brick carried my sweat and sacrifice. It wasn't just a house, it was the last memory of my late wife and the promise I made to my child. But instead of gratitude, I was repaid with betrayal. The daughter I raised alone now stood against me, siding with strangers. What happened next turned my world upside down and changed our family forever. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. This is how it all began. When I first walked through the doors of my villa that evening, I felt proud. My name is Ethan Mercer, and that villa was the proof of my life's hard work. Every brick, every wall, every room carried years of my sweat and sacrifice. I built it not just for myself, but for my daughter Lydia. After my wife passed away, that house became our safe place. It was more than a building, it was my promise to her. But that night, something felt different. Lydia came with her husband Brandon. She barely looked at me. Her eyes were cold, her smile forced. I wanted to hug her, to ask how she was doing, but she kept her distance. Behind her, Brandon wore his usual smirk, as if he already owned the place. And with them came Claudia, Brandon's mother. She glanced around the villa like she was inspecting her new purchase. We sat at the dining table, the same one where I once watched Lydia eat cereal as a little girl. Claudia kept making sly comments about the house. So old-fashioned, she said, running her fingers over the wooden chairs. These designs went out years ago. Her words stung, but I stayed silent. I wasn't raised to disrespect guests, even if they came with poison on their tongues. I looked at Lydia, hoping she'd defend me. But she stayed quiet, her face unreadable. I tried to start small talk, asking about her job, her life. She gave short answers, her attention fixed on Brandon. It felt like my daughter wasn't mine anymore. And then, it happened. In the middle of dinner, Lydia put down her fork. Her voice was calm, but her words sliced through me like a knife. "Dad," she said, "the villa doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to Brandon's family now." I froze. At first I thought I misheard her. I laughed nervously and asked, "What are you talking about, Lydia?" "This is our home." But Brandon leaned forward with a smug look on his face. "She signed the transfer, Mr. Mercer. The villa is ours now. It's official." My chest tightened. "What transfer?" I demanded, my voice louder than I intended. I turned to Lydia, my own daughter, the little girl I raised after her mother died. "Lydia, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't give them our home." But Lydia wouldn't even meet my eyes. She looked down at her plate, her hands trembling. Her silence was louder than any answer she could give. I felt the room spinning around me. Everything I had worked for, everything I had promised my late wife and my daughter, it was all slipping through my hands. My throat burned with anger and disbelief. Brandon leaned back casually, as if he had already won. "You need to accept it, Mr. Mercer. The villa belongs to us now. That's the reality." I slammed my hand on the table. "This is my house. I built it with my blood and sweat. You can't just walk in and take it." But the only response I got was Claudia's smirk. She sipped her wine and whispered, "Times change, Ethan. Maybe it's time you let go." I looked back at Lydia, praying for a sign, a word, anything. But she stayed silent, her eyes refusing to meet mine. In that moment, I felt something inside me break. The house that was once filled with love and laughter now felt like a battlefield. And for the first time I realized I wasn't just fighting for bricks and walls, I was fighting for my daughter's soul. And I knew this was only the beginning. That night, after everyone left, I couldn't sleep. My head kept replaying Lydia's words, "The villa belongs to them now," over and over, like a curse. I sat in my study, surrounded by boxes of old files and documents. Every paper, every receipt, every signature of mine. I wanted to prove to myself that the villa was still mine. Hours passed as I pulled out folders, one after another, then my heart sank. One important file was missing, the property deed, the paper that held my name, my blood, my legacy. It was gone. I felt my chest tighten. No, this can't be happening," I whispered to myself. My hands shook as I tore through drawers checking every corner, but the deed had vanished. I grabbed my phone and called Lydia. She didn't answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. The third time she declined the call, my own daughter, avoiding me. I texted her, "Lydia, we need to talk. Please call me." Her reply came minutes later, short and cold. "Dad, stop calling. This is done. Brandon is handling everything now." My stomach turned. Brandon. The man who stole my daughter's trust, and now my home. The next morning, I heard loud voices in the villa. I walked out and saw Claudia in the living room with workers. She was pointing at the walls, the windows, the furniture. "These curtains must go," she barked. "And paint this room white. It's too dark. This place needs to look like ours, not his." Her words cut through me. Ours, not his. I stepped forward. "This is my house," I said firmly. "You don't make changes here." Claudia smirked. "Not anymore, Ethan. You'll get used to it." Rage burned inside me, but before I could speak, Brandon walked in. He looked at me with that smug grin I hated. "You need to stop fighting this, Mr. Mercer," he said calmly, as if he was doing me a favor. "Accept reality. It'll be easier for you." I clenched my fists. "You tricked her. You manipulated my daughter." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "She chose me. She trusts me. And you're just in the way now." For a moment I wanted to hit him, but I stopped myself. Violence wouldn't save my daughter, and it wouldn't save my home. Behind Brandon, Dean Hale, his lawyer, stood silently. Dean kept adjusting his glasses, his eyes darting around nervously. He didn't say a word, but his body language told me something. He knew more than he was letting on. That night, I drove to see Maya Torres, an old friend who had stood by me after my wife died. She opened the door and immediately noticed the pain on my face. "What happened, Ethan?" she asked softly. I sat on her couch, my voice shaking as I told her everything. About Lydia, about Brandon, about the missing deed. I felt the weight of betrayal pressing down on me as I spoke. When I finished, Maya looked at me with determination. "Ethan, you can't give up. This isn't just about a house. This is about Lydia. They're controlling her. You need to fight back. Find out how they made her do this." Her words gave me strength. For the first time since dinner, I felt a spark of hope. I leaned back, thinking about every detail. Brandon's confidence, Claudia's arrogance, Dean's silence, Lydia's coldness. Something wasn't right. They had manipulated her, maybe even tricked her into signing. I looked at Maya and said, "You're right. I won't let them destroy everything. I'll find out the truth." That night, as I returned to my villa, I stood outside, staring at the house I once called my home. Claudia's car was parked in the driveway. Lights were on inside, but none of them belonged to me anymore. My heart ached, but my resolve hardened. If they thought I would roll over and accept this, they didn't know me, I whispered to myself. They wounded me, but this is only the first wound. I'll find out how they did it. And when I do, I'll make them pay. When I closed my eyes that night, memories of Lydia's childhood rushed back, her little hands holding mine at the park, her voice asking me, "Daddy, will you always protect me?" I had promised her I would. After her mother died, it was just me and her. I worked day and night to give her a good life. Every brick of that villa was proof of my sacrifice, and now, she was turning her back on me. The next morning, I drove to Lydia's apartment. My chest tightened as I knocked on her door. When she opened it, her face was cold, her eyes hard, not the daughter I once knew. "Dad," she said flatly. "Why are you here?" I swallowed my pride. "Lydia, I just want to talk, please. This isn't you. You don't have to do this to me." She crossed her arms. "I'm building a new life now. You need to respect that. Brandon and I, we're moving forward. The villa belongs to us." Her words cut deep, sharper than any knife. "A new life," I whispered. "Lydia, that house is our family's memory. Your mother's memory. How can you erase that?" Before she could answer, Brandon stepped into the room. His smirk made my blood boil. "Ethan," he said, as if speaking to a stranger, "you never gave her enough. Not emotionally, not financially. I'm the one giving her stability now. Isn't that right, Lydia?" Lydia stayed silent, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't read. Doubt, regret, or pride. Then Claudia appeared from the kitchen, holding a glass of juice like she owned the place. She didn't even wait for me to speak. "You're being selfish, Ethan," she snapped. "You don't want to see Lydia happy. You only care about what's yours. That's why she's better off with us now." I turned to Lydia, my voice breaking. "Do you really believe them, that I was selfish, that I didn't give you enough?" She looked away. Her lips trembled for just a second. I caught it. I knew she wasn't fully convinced, but pride, her pride, kept her from softening. "Dad," she said quietly, "maybe it's time you let me go." Those words crushed me. I wanted to shout, to shake her, to remind her of all the nights I stayed awake nursing her fevers, all the years I denied myself luxuries just so she could have more. But I saw Brandon's hand on her shoulder, Claudia's smirk in the background, and I realized they had her under their control. I left her apartment that day with a hole in my chest. Later I met Maya at a cafe. She listened carefully as I described everything. How Lydia spoke, how Brandon accused me, how Claudia poisoned her against me. Maya leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Ethan, this isn't just about Lydia. Claudia is pulling the strings. She wants your money. She's driving all of this for financial gain." I clenched my jaw. I knew it. I could see it in her eyes. "She doesn't care about Lydia. She only cares about what I built." Maya touched my hand gently. "Then you need proof. Don't argue with them anymore. Don't fight with Lydia in front of them. Just gather the truth. That's your weapon." Her words made sense. That night, I went back home and dug through my files again. Every bill, every tax paper, every legal record of the villa. I started building a folder. A folder that would prove without a doubt that the villa belonged to me, and only me. As I worked, anger and determination burned inside me. They thought I was weak, broken, defeated, but they forgot one thing. I had built this life with my own blood and sweat, and I wasn't about to hand it over. I closed the folder, whispering to myself, "If my daughter won't see the truth now, I'll make sure she does soon." I thought things couldn't get worse, but I was wrong. Every day I discovered something new that made my stomach twist. It started when a friend at the bank, someone I had known for years, called me. He spoke quietly, almost like he was afraid. "Ethan," he said, "did you know Lydia recently opened a joint account with Brandon? Large amounts are being moved. Regular deposits, quick withdrawals." My chest tightened. "A joint account," I whispered. "She never told me." The banker sighed. "I thought you should know. Something doesn't look right." I hung up and sat in silence. My daughter, the girl I raised alone, now tied financially to a man who was slowly bleeding her into his world. Later that week, Maya called me. Her voice was urgent. "Ethan, you need to hear this." I was at a gathering, and Claudia was there. She was bragging, loudly, saying once the house is secured, everything else will follow. She sounded proud, like she had already won. I clenched my fist. That woman, she was poisoning everything. Not only had she turned Lydia against me, now she was plotting openly. The more I dug, the worse it got. One night, I sat at my desk and went through every folder again. Mortgage receipts, tax forms. Then I found it, a photocopy of a document with Lydia's signature. It looked like a property transfer. My heart raced. The paper was too clean, too forced. Lydia's signature, it was hers, but it looked shaky, like it had been signed under pressure, or worse, forged. I stared at the page for a long time. My throat burned. I whispered to myself, "This is fraud. It has to be." But I had no proof. Just suspicion. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying every moment in my head. Lydia's cold words, Brandon's smirk, Claudia's taunts. They thought they had cornered me. They thought I'd give up. But no, I had to fight back. The next morning, I called Attorney Walsh. He was an old friend of my late wife. Honest, tough, a man who never backed down when he believed in something. We sat in his office, papers spread across his desk. He studied the transfer document, adjusting his glasses. After a long silence, he looked up at me. "Ethan, this won't be easy. The villa is still in your name, but Lydia's signature ties her legally. If she truly agreed to this transfer, the law will not be on your side." I shook my head. "She didn't agree. She doesn't understand what she signed. Or they tricked her." Brandon and Claudia are behind this. Walsh leaned back, his eyes steady. I believe you, but believing won't win in court. We'll need hard proof, dates, bank trails, any sign that coercion or fraud was involved. Until then, this paper makes things messy. His words sank deep into me. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, but instead of falling, something inside me hardened. I clenched my fists. Then I'll find the proof. I don't care how long it takes. They stole from me, but I will fight. Walsh nodded slowly. Good. Just remember, the fight will cost you time, and it will hurt. I stood up. My voice was firm, stronger than I had felt in weeks. I've been hurt already. They took my daughter. They tried to take my home. They can't take my spirit. As I walked out of his office, I could almost hear Brandon's smug voice in my head, mocking me. Claudia's laugh echoing behind it, and Lydia's silence. That was the hardest part. Her silence. But I swore to myself, right then and there, that I wouldn't let them win. I would uncover the truth, piece by piece, and when the time came, I'd make sure every one of them faced what they had done. A week later, Attorney Walsh called me back to his office. His tone over the phone was heavy. I knew he had found something. When I arrived, he didn't waste time. He placed 2 documents on the desk. One was the so-called transfer paper with Lydia's signature. The other was an old consent form Lydia had signed years ago for school. Look here, Walsh said, pointing with his pen. Notice the eddy in Lydia. On the real form, she curves it naturally. On this transfer, it's stiff, different pressure. Someone tried to copy her handwriting. I leaned in. My stomach dropped. You're saying she didn't sign this? Walsh nodded firmly. This looks forged, Ethan. And if I'm right, Claudia's the one behind it. She gains the most. I felt heat rise in my chest. Claudia, always smiling in public, always pretending she was protecting Lydia. But this was theft. I drove straight to Lydia's place. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. When she opened the door, her face was cold. Dad, why are you here again? I held up the papers. Because I need you to see the truth. This isn't your signature. Claudia forged it. She's tricking you, Lydia. She snatched the page and glanced at it, her jaw tightening. Then she shook her head. You're making this up. You'll say anything to ruin my marriage. My heart sank. Lydia, listen to me. I raised you. I would never lie to you. That woman Claudia is using you. She wants the villa and Brandon is helping her. Before she could respond, Brandon walked into the room, his arm casually around her shoulder. His smirk made my blood boil. Enough, Ethan, he said smoothly. You're trying to confuse her. You never gave her enough growing up, and now you're trying to rip apart her new life. Pathetic. Lydia looked at him, then at me. Her eyes were wet but full of pride. I'm done, Dad. I'm building my life with Brandon now. Stop interfering. I felt like someone had stabbed me in the chest. The daughter I had sacrificed everything for, now looking at me like I was the enemy. Brandon leaned close, his voice low but sharp. Walk away, old man. Or you'll regret it. Before I could reply, Claudia appeared in the hallway. Her smile was cold. You keep pushing, Ethan, and I'll make sure my lawyers bury you. Every word you say will sound like harassment. Think carefully before you act. She spoke like she had already won, like I was powerless. I looked back at Lydia, hoping, begging, for even a flicker of doubt in her eyes. But she turned away. I left the house that night feeling hollow. Betrayed, not just by Brandon or Claudia, but by Lydia's blindness. She couldn't see that she was being used. And the worst part, the law was on their side for now. That forged paper, until proven false, tied my hands. As I sat in my car outside their house, I whispered to myself, so this is how it is. The law protects liars, my own daughter defends them. Fine, if the law won't save me, I'll find another way. The night was heavy, but under that darkness, a fire burned in me. They thought I was broken. They thought I would walk away, but they were wrong. I never thought I would feel like a stranger in my own home. But that's exactly what happened. One afternoon, I drove past the villa, the place I built with my bare hands, the place where Lydia grew up. It didn't even look like mine anymore. The curtains were different. Flowers planted by Claudia filled the front yard. My wife's roses, the ones she loved, were gone. I stood outside the gate for a long time before walking in. I still had a key, but even holding it felt wrong. The villa wasn't mine now, it was theirs. When I stepped inside, my chest tightened. Claudia had redecorated everything. The photos of my late wife that once hung in the hallway were gone. The smell of her favorite candles, the ones Lydia used to light with me, had been replaced with Claudia's perfume. It felt like my wife had been erased from our lives. Claudia walked past me, smirking. "This place finally feels alive," she said. "So much better without all that old history." Her words cut like a knife. That history she spoke of was my wife. My memories. My family. Then I saw Lydia. She was standing proudly beside Brandon, her head high, her smile cold. Not once did she look ashamed. Not once did she show guilt. I wanted to grab her shoulders and shake her awake. I wanted to yell, "Can't you see what's happening?" But I didn't. I just stood there, silent. Later that evening I sat with Maya at a small cafe downtown. My voice was low, almost broken. "They've taken everything, Maya. The house, Lydia's heart, even the memory of her mother. It's like I never existed." Maya leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Don't talk like that, Ethan. You still have the truth on your side. Claudia forged those papers. That's your weapon. Don't give up now." Her words gave me a flicker of strength, but the weight on my chest was still heavy. That night, when I was alone, I found myself walking through the empty guest room of my apartment. My mind went back to a memory I had buried deep. Lydia was 7 years old. She sat on my lap, clutching a doll. She had looked up at me with big eyes and asked, "Daddy, will this house always be mine?" I had smiled and kissed her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, this home will always be yours." The memory hit me like a hammer. I had made her that promise, and now, she was helping strangers take it away. Tears burned my eyes. I pressed my hands to my face, ashamed that I was crying like a child. But it wasn't just the house I was losing. It was Lydia. It was everything I had fought for since her mother passed. I whispered into the dark. "I kept my promise, but you broke yours, Lydia." For hours I sat in silence. My grief ran deep, but beneath it, something else began to grow. Anger. I realized something. Fighting with emotion would destroy me. Every time I shouted, they twisted it against me. Every time I begged, they used it to humiliate me. If I wanted my daughter back, if I wanted my wife's memory to survive, I had to fight smarter, not harder. I wiped my tears and looked out the window into the night sky. My heart was still broken, but my mind was sharper than ever. "They think they've won," I whispered. "But this isn't over, not yet." And for the first time since losing the villa, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Attorney Walsh called me late one evening. His voice was calm, but I could hear the edge in it. "Ethan, I did some digging," he said. "Claudia isn't new to this game. She has a history. She's been sued before. Property disputes, fraud, even accusations of forgery. Nothing ever stuck, but the pattern is there." I gripped the phone tighter. My stomach turned. This wasn't just about my house. This was Claudia's way of life. She preyed on families. She stole homes. When I hung up, I sat at my desk, my hands shaking. I pulled out a notebook and began writing everything down. Dates, conversations, things Claudia had said, even her smug looks when she thought no one was watching. I wasn't going to fight her with rage anymore. I was going to build a case, brick by brick. The next day, something strange happened. Dean Hale, Claudia's husband, pulled me aside outside the courthouse. He looked tired, like a man carrying a heavy secret. "Ethan," he whispered, glancing around, "be careful, you don't know who you're dealing with." I narrowed my eyes. "What do you mean?" Dean's lips pressed tight. He didn't want to say more, but then he leaned closer. "Claudia, she's done worse things than you realize, things that never made it to court." His words sent a chill down my spine. For a moment I wondered, could Dean be my way in? Could he turn against his own wife? Or was this just another trick? "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Dean's eyes darted to the ground. "Because one day she'll come after me too." Then he walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers. That night I met Maya again. She listened carefully as I told her everything. Walsh and Dean had said. Maya leaned back, her arms crossed. Ethan, you need someone stronger in your corner. Someone who can actually act. What about Officer Ramirez? He's honest, he won't look the other way. Her words made sense. Ramirez had always been straight with me in the past, so I called him. We met in his office. He sat across from me, arms folded, his badge glinting under the light. Ethan, he said, after hearing my story, I believe you. But belief isn't enough. Without hard proof, my hands are tied. If I move too soon, Claudia will bury this, and you with it. His words crushed me, but I also understood. Proof. That was the key. Without it, Claudia would walk free again, just like she always had. I walked out of that office with a storm in my chest. The law couldn't protect me. My daughter wouldn't believe me. Claudia had the upper hand, but for the first time I wasn't scared. I was angry. If I wanted justice, I would have to catch her myself. I would have to make sure there was no denying it. No loopholes, no excuses. That night I stared at the photos of Lydia. I still kept on my nightstand. She looked so innocent in them, so far from the woman who now stood proudly beside Brandon and Claudia. I whispered, I'll save you, Lydia. Even if you hate me now, one day you'll see the truth. I closed my notebook and placed it in my drawer. I wasn't just fighting for my house anymore. I was fighting for my daughter, for her future, for her soul. And deep down I knew one thing: to win, I had to be patient. I had to be cold, and I had to wait for Claudia to make her move. Because when she did, I would be ready. I knew I had to be smart. Direct attacks weren't working, so I came up with a plan that felt crazy, but it was my only chance. I decided to host a family dinner, a fake one, a setup. My goal was simple: get Claudia comfortable enough to talk. I called Lydia first. My voice was steady, even though my heart was racing. Lydia, I said, it's been too long. Why don't you and Brandon come over for dinner? Let's put the tension aside, just for one evening. She hesitated for a moment, then agreed. I could almost hear Brandon whispering in the background, pushing her to say yes, and of course Claudia wouldn't miss a chance to gloat. She confirmed quickly, her tone dripping with smugness. That night, I set the table like nothing was wrong. Candles, wine. Plates polished until they gleamed. From the outside it looked like a family gathering. But inside, I was boiling. Every detail was part of the trap. The doorbell rang. I opened the door and there she was. Claudia Hale. She walked in like she owned the place, her heels clicking against the floor. She glanced around and smirked. Still trying to hold on to this place, Ethan. Cute. Brandon followed, arrogant as always. He puffed out his chest and said, "Give it time, old man. This villa will pay for our future. I've got business ideas. Big ones. You'll see." Lydia came last, my daughter. My heart ached when I looked at her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She stood beside Brandon as if I was nothing more than a stranger. That hurt more than any wound Claudia had given me. We sat down to eat. The tension was thick, but I forced myself to smile. I asked about Brandon's plans. He bragged. I asked about Lydia's happiness. She brushed me off, cold as ice. Every word was a dagger. But then, the moment came. Claudia leaned back in her chair, sipping her wine. She was too relaxed, too proud. She started talking about her past, little slips, little hints. She laughed and said, "You know, this isn't the first time I've had to adjust papers. Sometimes the law just needs a little push." My chest tightened, my ears rang. She had said it, not directly about this house, but enough to open a door. Across the table, Maya sat silently, her phone hidden in her bag. She gave me the smallest nod. She was recording. Every single word Claudia spoke was being saved. I leaned forward, careful not to push too hard. "What do you mean by adjusting papers?" Claudia smirked. "Oh, come on, Ethan. Don't act so shocked. You think everyone plays fair, only fools believe that." I clenched my fists under the table. I wanted to shout. I wanted to call her out right there. But I didn't. Not yet. I had to keep her talking. "Sounds risky," I said. If anyone found out, she waved her hand like it was nothing. No one ever does. People like me, we don't get caught. Her arrogance was my weapon. Every word from her mouth was another nail in her coffin. Dinner ended with Brandon bragging, Lydia silent, and Claudia smirking. To them, it was just another victory lap. To me, it was the start of their downfall. After they left, I closed the door and leaned against it, my knees weak. Maya walked up and showed me the screen of her phone. The recording was clear. Claudia's voice, bragging about forgery. I finally had something, not enough to end her, but enough to start. That night, I looked at the empty chairs around the table and whispered to myself, "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." For the first time in weeks, I felt hope, small, fragile hope, but hope nonetheless, because now, I had a weapon. I thought I finally had something, that recording of Claudia bragging about forgery. It was my lifeline, my proof, and deep down I wanted my daughter to be the first person to hear it. So, I called Lydia. I asked her to come alone. She showed up, standing in the doorway, like she wasn't sure if she should step inside. "Why am I here, Dad?" she asked, her voice cold but shaky. I swallowed hard. "Because I need you to see the truth, just you and me." We sat down at the kitchen table. I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Claudia's voice filled the room, her words cut through the silence. Sometimes the law just needs a little push. People like me, we don't get caught. Lydia's face changed, her eyes widened, her lips trembled. For the first time in months, I saw my little girl under all that hardness. "Lydia," I said quietly. "This is who you're protecting." Claudia forged papers. "She's lying to all of us. You don't have to stand by her. You don't have to stand by Brandon either. Come back to me, please." She buried her face in her hands. "I don't know, Dad. I've had doubts. Brandon, Claudia, I don't trust them sometimes. But I'm stuck. They say if I leave, I'll have nothing. I'm scared." My heart ached hearing her. I reached out, holding her hand like I used to when she was little. "You'll never have nothing. You'll always have me. We can fight this together, just trust me." For the first time in so long, I felt a spark of hope. My daughter was breaking through. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to come back. But then, it happened. The twist that broke me. She suddenly pulled her hand away. She stood up, wiping her tears, and said, "I can't. I just can't." Before I could stop her, she grabbed the phone from the table, the one holding the recording. She held it tight and whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad," and then the front door opened. Brandon walked in. He looked at her, then at me, and smiled like a snake. "What's going on here?" he asked. Lydia's voice shook. "He has a recording. Claudia talking about papers." She held the phone out to him. I froze. "Lydia, don't," I shouted, but it was too late. She placed it in Brandon's hand. He laughed. He didn't even listen. He just smashed it against the wall. "My proof, gone in seconds. You really thought you could trick us?" Brandon sneered. "You're pathetic. Trying to ruin our family with fake stories. You disgust me." I stared at my daughter, searching her face for regret, for anything, but she just stood by him, silent, afraid. When I tried to reach for her, she stepped back. "Don't call me again, Dad," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm choosing my life with Brandon, not you." Those words cut deeper than any knife. I watched her walk away. My daughter, my blood, she had betrayed me, again. When the door slammed shut, I collapsed into the chair. My chest felt heavy. My hands shook. For a moment I wanted to give up. Maybe they had already won. Maya came in and found me sitting there, broken. She put her hand on my shoulder. "Ethan," she said softly, "listen to me. The deeper the betrayal, the sharper the revenge." I looked at her, my eyes burning. Her words lit a fire inside me. I realized she was right. If Lydia had chosen her side, then I would fight alone, and I would make Claudia and Brandon regret every step they took inside my home. This wasn't the end. No, this betrayal would only make me strike harder. After Lydia's betrayal, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying that moment, her handing the proof to Brandon like I was nothing. I felt crushed, but pain does something strange. It either kills you or it makes you fight harder. That night, I made my choice. I wouldn't stop. If I couldn't win through Claudia, I would take Brandon down. The next morning, I called Walsh. I need you to dig deeper, I told him. Not just on Claudia, look at Brandon. Every dollar, every account, everything. Walsh didn't hesitate. Give me 2 days, he said. 2 days later he came back with something big. His voice was excited, almost trembling. Ethan, you won't believe this. Brandon has accounts moving money overseas. Thousands. Some of it doesn't even make sense. It's hidden under shell companies. This isn't clean money. It's fraud. Maybe worse. I leaned back in my chair, my heart pounding. Finally something real, something bigger than Claudia's forged papers. But then another surprise came. Dean Hale. He called me out of nowhere. We need to talk, alone, he said. His voice was low, tense. I didn't know what to think. Dean was Claudia's lawyer, her right-hand man. Meeting him could be a trap. Still I went. We met at a small diner outside of town. Dean looked different, tired, worn down. His eyes darted around like he was scared of being watched. I can't stand her anymore, he muttered, leaning close. Claudia, she's bleeding people dry. Brandon is a fool, and your daughter, she doesn't even see what's happening. I stared at him. Why are you telling me this? He sighed. Because I've been keeping records. Files. Every shady deal, every document Claudia buried. If she goes down, I go down too. But if you take her out, I walk free. Nobody ever has to know I helped. Then he slid an envelope across the table. Thick, heavy. My fingers tingled when I touched it. What's in here? I asked. Everything, he whispered. Transfers, contracts, signatures that don't belong. Enough to bury them, but you can't ever say it came from me. If Claudia finds out, she'll ruin me. I sat there, frozen. Part of me wanted to grab it and run. Another part of me screamed, this could be a setup. Dean looked me straight in the eyes. I hate her, Ethan. You're not the only one, but you have to decide, do you want revenge or do you want peace? Because once you open that envelope, there's no going back. I couldn't answer. My hands shook under the table. Later at home I told Maya what happened. She listened quietly, then said, it could be real. It could also be a trick. But if you never open it, you'll never know. I shook my head. What if this is just another way to trap me? To make me look desperate? Maya grabbed my hand. Then be cautious. But Ethan, Dean wouldn't risk his own career like that unless he meant it. Trust, but verify. We have nothing left to lose. Her words gave me courage. That night I sat alone at the table, the envelope in front of me. My heart was racing. I thought about Lydia, about Brandon's smug face, about Claudia sitting on her throne like she owned everything. I tore it open. Inside there were bank statements, scanned contracts, emails, everything Walsh had hinted at, but worse. There were signatures that didn't match, transfers that screamed fraud, deals with names I recognized from shady rumors. Brandon wasn't just careless, he was dirty. And Claudia had her fingerprints all over it. I leaned back, breathing hard. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I thought I'd lost. Hope. Maybe. Just maybe. This was the key to everything. When I finally opened Dean's files, I felt like I was holding dynamite. It was powerful, but dangerous. I couldn't trust my own eyes, so I decided to take it to someone who could. That's when Officer Ramirez came in. He was an old friend of Walsh's, straight as they come. No bribes, no games. If he said it was real, then it was real. I handed him the papers. My hand shook as I pushed the folder across his desk. Tell me if this means anything, I said. He went through each page carefully. Bank transfers, fake contracts, names that screamed trouble. The silence in that room was heavy. I could hear my own heartbeat. Finally Ramirez leaned back. Ethan, this is solid. Money laundering. Fraud. If this gets to court, Brandon and Claudia are finished. I felt my chest tighten. For the first time I had a weapon. A real weapon. Walsh joined us later that day. He scanned the files, nodding with grim satisfaction. This isn't just smoke, he said. This is fire. We can take them down. But then his tone shifted. He looked at me, serious. There's a problem. Lydia's name is all over some of these deals. She may not have signed them herself, but she benefited. If we push this case, she'll be dragged in. She won't walk away clean. His words hit me harder than a punch. My own daughter. I wanted to save her, not ruin her. That night I sat in my kitchen staring at those papers. My mind was at war with itself. What if I destroy her life just to win? What if she ends up hating me forever? I thought about her face, the way she used to run to me as a child, calling me dad, with so much love. And now, she looked at me like a stranger. The guilt nearly broke me. I whispered into the empty room, am I saving her, or destroying her? Maya found me sitting there in the dark. She sat across from me, her eyes soft but firm. You're thinking about Lydia, aren't you? I nodded, my throat tight. Maya leaned closer. Listen, Ethan. Sometimes love means letting someone face the pain. Sometimes pain is the only teacher. You can't shield her forever. Not when she's drowning in their lies. Her words cut deep, but they rang true. Lydia was trapped in Claudia and Brandon's world. If I didn't act, she would sink with them. I clenched my fists. The decision was tearing me apart, but I knew I had to make it. Finally, I whispered the words that sealed my choice. If I lose her love forever, at least she'll know the truth. Maya placed her hand over mine. Then it settled. We fight. I nodded. The guilt was still there, heavy on my chest, but now under it there was something else. Resolve. The next morning, I called Walsh. My voice was steady. Move forward with the case, no matter what it costs. He hesitated, then said, all right, Ethan, but once we start this, there's no turning back. I closed my eyes and whispered, I don't want to turn back. And just like that, the chain was broken. The chain of silence, the chain of fear. For the first time, I felt like I was the one pulling the strings, but deep inside, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. The town was buzzing with whispers. Everywhere I went, I heard their family's name, the Hales, spoken with disgust. People in the cafe leaned closer to each other, lowering their voices. At the grocery store, neighbors stopped talking the moment I walked past. The rumors had spread faster than wildfire. Everyone now knew there was corruption in Claudia's family. I stayed quiet, pretending not to notice. But inside, I was burning. For years they had stolen, lied, and hurt people, and now the mask was slipping. Finally the truth was leaking out and they couldn't hide it anymore. Claudia was the first to break. I saw it in her eyes when we crossed paths in town. She looked nervous, glancing left and right, her smile fake and shaky. At home I heard from Dean that she had become paranoid. She yelled at him for the smallest things. One evening, I overheard their fight. Claudia's voice carried through the open window. You're weak, Dean. You let this happen. If you had stood up, none of this would have spread. Dean answered calmly, but his tone was sharp. Don't blame me for your greed, Claudia. You made this mess yourself. I could almost imagine her face turning red. That woman never accepted blame for anything. Lydia wasn't spared either. Claudia lashed out at her too. My daughter was caught between them, forced to watch her husband and his family lose control. Claudia barked at her, accusing her of not supporting them enough, of being disloyal. Lydia's voice cracked when she tried to defend herself. Then there was Brandon. He was worse. The pressure made him reckless. I saw him one afternoon at the market, yelling at Lydia in front of everyone. He grabbed her wrist tightly, his voice loud and angry. You don't trust me, do you? You're just like your father, he shouted. People stopped to stare. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. She begged him softly, Brandon, please not here. But he didn't care. He wanted to show dominance. My hands clenched into fists as I watched. It took everything in me not to step forward, but I knew I had to wait. Timing was everything. That night Lydia came home looking broken. I caught a glimpse of her smile, the smile that used to light up my world when she was a little girl. It was gone. Day by day I had seen it fade. Now all I saw in her eyes was pain. That sight cut deeper than any wound I had ever known. Meanwhile, Officer Ramirez was preparing the final step, the warrants. He told me quietly. Ethan, it's almost ready. Brandon and Claudia won't be able to escape this time. I nodded, though my heart was heavy. I had prayed for this moment for so long. Yet the closer it came, the more I feared what it would do to Lydia. She would see her husband and his family exposed, humiliated, destroyed. She would also know I had a hand in it. Maya noticed the conflict in me. One evening, she placed a hand on my shoulder and said softly, "Don't lose yourself now, Ethan. The storm has to come before the calm. This is almost over." Her words steadied me. I looked at her and whispered, I don't want to lose my daughter forever." Maya shook her head gently. "Sometimes we have to lose something to save it. Let the truth do its work. Lydia needs to see who they really are." I stayed quiet, letting her words sink in. She was right. I had to be strong, even if it tore me apart inside. The days that followed felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. People were tense, watching the Hale family unravel. Claudia was snapping at everyone. Brandon was exploding in public. Lydia was fading away. Dean kept his head low, avoiding everyone. And me, I stood still, waiting, watching, feeling the storm gather all around us. I could sense it in my bones. Something big was coming, and once it broke, nothing would ever be the same again. The storm finally broke on a night none of us would forget. The Hale family had gathered inside my villa that they had claimed as theirs. They laughed and drank, acting like kings and queens, while I stood outside in the shadows, waiting. I could hear their voices through the windows. Claudia's sharp tone, Brandon's arrogant laugh, Lydia's softer words trying to calm them down. Then it happened. The flashing red and blue lights cut through the night. Police cars surrounded the house. Doors slammed. Officers moved fast, their boots pounding against the ground. Neighbors stepped out of their homes, whispering and pointing. The whole town awake to watch the fall of the mighty Hales. Claudia was the first to react. Her voice shrieked from inside the villa. "What is this? How dare you enter my home?" But it wasn't her home, not anymore. The police stormed inside. I followed close behind with Officer Ramirez, papers in his hand, warrants signed by the judge. He raised his voice firmly. "Claudia Hale, Brandon Hale, you are under arrest for fraud, laundering, and multiple financial crimes." Claudia's face turned pale. She stumbled backward, shaking her head. No, this can't be happening." "Dean, do something. Tell them this is a mistake." Dean stood frozen. For the first time he didn't speak. His silence cut deeper than any words. His eyes were empty, as if he had already given up. Brandon, on the other hand, exploded. He slammed his fist on the table. "This is nonsense. You can't arrest me." "Do you know who I am?" Two officers grabbed him by the arms. He fought back, shouting at Lydia, "Say something, tell them I'm innocent." But Lydia couldn't move. She stood in shock, her body trembling. Tears filled her eyes as she watched the officers twist Brandon's wrists and force him into cuffs. Claudia's screams filled the air. "I built this family. I gave you everything. You can't do this to me." The officers didn't flinch. They read her rights, pulling her hands behind her back. Her voice cracked into desperate cries, but it was too late. The crowd outside cheered, finally seeing justice. And then Lydia broke. She collapsed to her knees, covering her face with her hands. Her voice was faint, shaking with regret. "What have I done?" she whispered. Her words pierced straight through me. For years I had waited for this moment, justice, revenge, the return of what was stolen. But hearing my daughter's pain made it bittersweet. I stepped closer, kneeling beside her. My heart was torn in two. Anger burned inside me for how she had betrayed me, how she had chosen Brandon over her own father. But love still lingered. She was my daughter, my little girl, no matter what. She lifted her tear-streaked face to me. "Dad, I didn't see it. I was blind. I destroyed everything. Can you ever forgive me?" I swallowed hard. My voice came out heavy. "Lydia, you chose them over your own blood. You left me when I needed you most. Do you know what that did to me?" She nodded weakly, sobbing harder. "Yes, I know now, and it's killing me inside." For a moment I wanted to hold her, to tell her it would be all right. But the wound was too deep. My silence said more than words ever could. Behind us the officers dragged Claudia and Brandon out of the villa. Their shouts echoed through the night, but no one cared anymore. The town had turned against them. Ramirez handed me a folder. His voice was calm. "It's official, Ethan. The villa is yours again. The court has restored it under your name." I looked at the papers, my name printed clearly. Ethan Grayson, the rightful owner. The villa was mine again. But as I stood there watching my daughter cry, I realized the cost. Justice had been served, but the scars it left behind were deep. I had won back the house, but I had lost so much along the way. Neighbors clapped and cheered outside, but their voices felt distant. I turned to the villa, the place that had once been filled with laughter, family and memories. Now it stood as a symbol of betrayal and pain. The storm had passed, but the damage it left could never be erased. And deep down I knew, the real battle wasn't with the Hales anymore. It was inside me, between my anger and my love, between revenge and forgiveness. The villa was mine again, but was my family gone forever? I was sitting in my old apartment, the one I hadn't stepped into for months. The place smelled of dust and memories. I thought I had left this chapter of my life behind. But that evening, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, I froze. It was Lydia, my daughter. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She wasn't dressed in the expensive clothes the Hales used to give her. She looked simple, broken, almost like the girl she used to be before greed poisoned everything. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. For a moment I couldn't breathe. All I saw was the same daughter who once betrayed me, who turned her back on me when I needed her most. My chest burned with old wounds. She stepped inside slowly. Her hands shook as she gripped her purse. I didn't know where else to go. I stayed silent. My anger wanted me to push her away, but my heart wouldn't let me. Finally she broke down. She dropped to her knees right there in the small living room. Tears streamed down her face. "I was blind," she sobbed. "I thought they loved me. I thought money was everything. I was greedy. I destroyed us, and I destroyed you." Her words cut deep. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to remind her of the nights I cried alone, of the times she chose them over me, but I couldn't speak. My throat felt like stone. Maya, who had been sitting on the couch, touched my arm gently. "Ethan, listen to her." I looked at Maya, then back at Lydia. My mind flashed back to years ago. Lydia was only a little girl, terrified after a nightmare. She ran into my room, clinging to me like I was her whole world. I remembered holding her close and whispering, "It's okay, I'm here." That memory broke me. My anger began to soften. Not disappear, but soften. Lydia lifted her head, her face streaked with tears. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know I see everything now. I see what I did, and I hate myself for it." Her words hung heavy in the room. I finally spoke, my voice low but steady. "Forgiveness isn't something I can hand out like a gift. It's not that simple. Forgiveness is a path, and you'll have to walk it, step by step." She covered her face, crying harder, but there was relief in her tears, like she had finally heard the truth she needed. For the first time in a long time I saw my daughter again, not the Hale family's puppet, not the girl blinded by greed, but Lydia Grayson, my child. The scars between us were still there, and I knew they always would be. But in that moment I also knew the storm was passing. Something inside me shifted. The war wasn't just about the Hales anymore, it was about healing what they had broken inside my family. I looked out the window, the night quiet and heavy. Tomorrow would bring consequences, trials and judgment. But tonight in this small apartment, something more important had begun. A reckoning. A chance for Lydia to face herself and for me to decide how far a father's love could bend without breaking. And as I watched her sit on my floor broken and begging, I whispered to myself, "The Hales took everything from me, but they will not take my daughter's soul." The trials came fast. The evidence was strong. Every document, every hidden account, every lie the Hale family built their empire on, now it was all exposed. Claudia and Brandon sat in the courtroom, their faces pale, their pride gone. The same people who once bowed to them now whispered and pointed at them like criminals. When the judge read the sentence, Claudia gasped. 15 years. Brandon got 12, both for fraud and laundering. Their empire collapsed in one moment. The mighty Hales once feared, now reduced to nothing but inmates in orange jumpsuits. I should have felt pure joy, and part of me did. But another part of me knew, justice always comes with a price. Dean was the one who shocked me most. He didn't fight, he didn't defend them, he just sat there quiet, his face empty. After the sentencing, he slipped out of town without a word. No one saw him again. Maybe he couldn't handle the shame. Maybe he ran from it. Either way, he was gone. That chapter of their family was closed. But my story wasn't finished yet. Lydia stayed by my side after the trial. She was quiet, humble, almost like she was relearning how to breathe. She cooked simple meals in my small apartment. She walked with me in silence. She tried every day to show me that she was still my daughter. It wasn't easy, I won't lie. The betrayal still haunted me. But when I looked at her, I remembered the child she used to be. Slowly, painfully, we started rebuilding. Not perfect, not like before, but something real. I finally had my villa back. The place they once stole from me was mine again. I stood in the front yard, looking up at the house that carried both my worst nightmares and my greatest memories. This time, I didn't restore it for myself. I restored it for my late wife. I placed her picture back on the fireplace right where it belonged. I spoke softly, like she could hear me. We're home again. They couldn't erase you. They couldn't erase us. Maya was there, smiling. She had fought with me every step of the way. She hugged me tight and said, "You won, Ethan. But don't forget you bled for this victory." Her words were true. Winning wasn't clean. It was painful, it was heavy, and it left scars on my heart that will never fade. But it was worth it. I stood there in the villa, the evening sun pouring through the windows. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Not perfect peace, but enough. I whispered to myself, they stole my home, but not my soul. And that was the truth. The Hales had tried to crush me with lies, greed, and betrayal. They almost destroyed me. But in the end, truth stood taller than their corruption. Justice, though slow, arrived. And my final thought, the lesson I'll never forget, is this. Greed may take what's yours, but truth will always bring it back. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments.